Michael Jordan is not only the best basketball player, but he's the most exciting basketball player to ever play.
Tatum fires away, pumps it in, 51 for Jason Tatum.
The Big Three NBA podcast is powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Big Three NBA podcast. I'm your host, Sherrod Blakely, and I'm joined by the Dallas Morning News, Michael Curtis, who covers the Dallas Mavericks, who folks around this part of the country are interested in hearing what's going on in D. What's going on, Michael? What's going on with you, boy?
How you doing, man? Glad to be here. I feel like it's a full circle moment right now.
Man, listen, for those who don't know Michael, we'll get into what he did before he got to Dallas. But I mean, when y'all hear me talk about going from ashy to classy, the story of this brother's career, where he's at now versus where he was like a year ago right now, man, you talk about, yes, big transition indeed. But before we get into all that, we want to talk about what we really want to talk about, and that is this NBA Finals between the Boston Celtics and the Dallas Mavericks. Boston took care of their business in 5 games against the Indiana Pacers. Seems like forever. They've been off waiting for their opponent, and their opponent has arrived in the form of the Dallas Mavericks, who surprisingly took care of the Minnesota Timberwolves in short fashion. Beat them in 5 games, and before that, they knocked off OKC in 6, and then before that, they knocked off the Los Angeles Clippers in 6 games. So you look at the road that Dallas has taken to get here, Michael, and clearly it has not been nearly as smooth as the one that the Celtics took. What are some of the takeaways you have from just the path that Dallas has taken to get to where they are now? What jumps out at you about their success in getting here?
Yeah, I think if anything stands out, it's the fact that this team is battle tested. They entered the postseason as a 5th seed in the Western Conference, and it hasn't been an easy road. They had to go through the Clippers, a veteran team who most people thought were probably going to be contenders in the Western Conference if they were fully healthy. Granted, Kawhi Leonard wasn't available for the majority of that series, but I think just them being able to hone in on the defensive end has gotten them as far as they've gotten right now. They were able to go through a really tough OKC team who a lot of people probably thought were going to be contending with the Denver Nuggets, but the Minnesota Timberwolves took care of that. And then when you go through one of the emerging stars in Anthony Edwards and the best defense in the league, I think if anything, this Dallas Mavericks team is battle tested. They've come back from double-digit deficits multiple times in the playoffs, and they're riding the backs of their 2 stars, Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, and we will get into Kyrie at some point, because you can't have a conversation about the Boston Celtics and the Dallas Mavericks and not get into Kyrie a little bit. I'm probably not going to get into him as much as some of the folks in this neck of the woods will, for too many reasons to get into. But the guy that you mentioned that I do want to talk about now is Luka. For years, he has been one of the promising on-the-rise superstar talents. You'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who believes he's not a top 5 player. Some would argue he's the best player or one of the top 2 or 3 best players in the NBA. Now, during this journey, there were some reports that he was kind of battling some injuries early on, but it seemed as the postseason got deeper, as the Mavericks got deep into the postseason, his health seemingly got better. What's the latest on him? I mean, is he, from a physical standpoint, is he good to go right now?
Yeah, he's being listed as questionable pretty much every game due to right knee soreness and left ankle soreness. He banged that knee pretty good against Ivica Zubac in the first round against the Clippers, and he's been hindered by it ever since. But still, he's played every game. Limited or not limited, he's pretty much gone out there and put his best foot forward to be available for his team. And based on how he's performing, you wouldn't think that he's hurt. Honestly, I think it was the other day they posted a picture of him from the Western Conference Finals. He's holding a trophy, and his right knee, blood is seeping out of that right knee. And I don't know how he's doing it, but it seems like he's just battling through what he considers a right knee injury. And I think he was asked back in that Clipper series, if this was a regular season game, would you be playing? So probably not. But the fact that he is available and he's giving it all on a nightly basis, putting up the numbers, the triple doubles that he's putting up, I think he's pretty much the reason why the Mavericks are in this position to kind of get their first championship since 2011.
Yeah, and he really is. I mean, one of the latest and maybe potentially the greatest part of this international barrage of superstar talents who are putting their teams in positions to lead and win a championship. You look at Giannis Antetokounmpo, you look at the Joker, now you look at what he's doing, and they really pushed back on that narrative that for many of us had for so long about international players, and that they're soft and they can't play through pain and they can't win the big ones because they're not built to do that or whatever the heck that means. But Luka has shown a durability and a toughness that I think you have to, first of all, you have to admire and respect. But for a lot of people, it really is refreshing to see, him just find ways to win with a team that, I mean, you take away Kyrie Irving and you look take Kyrie out of the equation and you look at the rest of the roster. And I'm not sure that looks like a championship caliber roster. And yet here they are, 4 wins away from winning, the franchise's second NBA title. When you spend time around Luka and we see the numbers and we see the, the sidestep, fadeaway, 3-ball, and just all the things that he does on the floor, are there things about Luka that, for those of us who aren't around him, we should know about that he does, or things that he says, or just something about him that maybe doesn't necessarily catch the eye immediately, but that being around him, it sticks with you as kind of one of the main reasons why he's so great and why this team's so good?
Yeah, I'm still fairly new to covering the beat, but the one thing I've noticed about Luka since being here is just his attention to detail and focus before and after games. He's locked in. He's going to his pregame workouts 15 minutes earlier than he was in the regular season. And he's trying to get as much work as he can in to get that knee working to be available throughout the game, because once he's in, he's playing the majority of the minutes on a nightly basis. He's averaging somewhere around 38 I want to say minutes a night, especially in the postseason for the Mavericks, and they need every bit of it. But one thing on the floor that has stuck out to me, I know a lot of people see the scoring, they see the highlights, but just his passing ability. He has a few touchdown passes to Kyrie Irving in this postseason where it's like, how did you place that ball where it needed to be? And I want to say game 4, he had an alley-oop to Dereck Jones Jr., where he pretty much led him. he threw the ball, and Dereck Jones Jr. was at the 3-point line. But by the time the ball was in the air and at the rim, Dereck Jones Jr. was able to dunk it through. So I think his passing is really what sticks out to me so far.
Yeah, he has certainly shown himself to be elite at that particular facet of the game, and really elite in pretty much every metric you want to come up with offensively. As the NBA and NHL seasons start to wind down, things are just heating up in the WNBA and on the baseball front. There's no better time than now to join Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million active members. With Prize Picks, you can turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports team this summer. You can make a Prize Pick lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just need to pick more or less on 2 to 6 players, stat projections, and you're locked in. For me, one of my go-to guys has been Jason Tatum of the Boston Celtics, who, when it comes to rebounding, I'm going more almost every time. He was great for me during the Eastern Conference Finals against Indiana when he reached double-digit rebounds in 3 of the 4 games. That's what I'm talking about, JT. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's right. Just download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Defensively, this is where I've been really surprised. To me, of all the things that Dallas has done to get here, teams' inability to take full advantage of Luka defensively has been surprising. And then I went back and I looked at the numbers I looked at specifically how did guys shoot against the Mavericks when Luka was a primary defender. And guys were shooting damn near 60% in the playoffs when Luka was guarding them. And I didn't do game 5 because the numbers weren't available when I was doing the research, but I'm just pulling it up now. And guys were like basically around that same number, 60-ish%. And I guess here's the thing I'm curious about. How have they been able to not allow that to be a factor? Because the Celtics, without even necessarily making it a focal point of the game plan, they're going to be looking to go at Luka. And if for no other reason, just to make him work a little bit harder on defense, so maybe he'll have a little less juice on the offensive end. But what has been the key to Dallas not allowing some of his shortcomings defensively to become issues and them getting to where they are now?
Yeah, there have been a lot of instances this postseason where teams will schematically look to target Luka just because they know defense is not his specialty. I think it's interesting because he's actually like stepped up to the challenge of guarding throughout this postseason, and I think it's translating over to the rest of his teammates. I spoke to Derrick Jones Jr. A couple of games ago, and Luka had 5 steals and 1 block. It was a career high 5 steals, and he joked with me and said all first team defense. But he pretty much said like, hey, if the best player on a nightly basis is going out and accepting that challenge to defend, then who am I to say I can't go out and defend? We know Derrick Jones Jr. is one of the best defenders in the perimeter defenders in the league. So I think it's just because they have a team that is pretty good defensively. You add Derrick Jones Jr., PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford. They're able to kind of make up for when guys get past Luka or guys get past Kyrie, that they're able to come over and pretty much deter those shots at the rim. Now, the one-on-one step backs that Anthony Edwards and Shea and James Harden and Paul George, they were hitting. I mean, you just got to live with those because those are dynamic shot makers. But I think it's been pretty widely known that Luka stepped his defense up this postseason.
And particularly at moments when they needed a stop. I mean, he had that one, I think, deflection or stop against Gobert, and I can't remember if it was game 3 or 4. That was a big play in that game, and I was a little bit surprised, to be candid with you, when I started looking at the numbers, because I thought Luka, the eye test was telling me he was defending better than the actual data was saying, because again, I saw greater effort, I guess, more than anything else in him defensively. And a couple of guys that you just mentioned, I wanted us to talk about them, and I was thinking about them after I saw I think a video that you posted on X or retweeted on X with PJ and Gafford, who started from the bottom, now they're here. And the fact that they were in 2 of just the crappiest NBA programs, something you, my friend, are familiar with, them coming from Charlotte and Washington, and to come from that type of, back of the bus, end of the league, bottom of the standings position, to now being 4 wins away from an NBA title. Talk to me a little bit about just what those 2 guys in particular have brought to the table, because it really does seem that when you go through all the things that this Dallas team has done well, their emergence, as well as Lively, throw him in there too as well, but their emergence specifically as guys who are in really bad teams has really been one of the things that has fueled this team's run to get to the finals. Yeah,
definitely. When you look at the trade deadline acquisition of PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, he was in Washington, PJ was in Charlotte. I got a stat for you right here. Before acquiring those 2, the Mavs are 29-23. In the regular season. After acquiring them, they went 33-14 to finish the season. Wow. So obviously that's a significant improvement. And I think this team was known primarily for its offense before those trades, but they've added a defensive dynamic that's pretty much helped them get to where they are now. And I think when you look at a guy like PJ Washington, who can defend the best perimeter player on any given night, that probably wasn't highlighted as much in Charlotte because there were fewer expectations of a team who was not destined to make the playoffs. Now, when you get in the spotlight and you're playing with a guy like Luka and Kyrie, for that matter, your role is going to be magnified a little bit more. We saw what he was able to do against the LA Clippers, it's become a meme. He's pretty much said he was standing on business that night. I think he's also added a toughness dynamic to this team that they didn't have before. Then when you look at a guy like Daniel Gafford, we all know what he's capable of. Fifth-year big man. He's a lob threat. He's a rim protector. That's added a different dynamic to this group as well, because when you got two guys like Kyrie and Luka who can penetrate and get to the hole, the fact that you're able to, when defenses choose to come up and defend those guys, you can just lob it up and Gafford can finish. And that goes the same for Lively as well. I think he made all 16 of his field goals in the conference finals, which is an insane stat when you think about it. Yeah, but of course, majority of those were dunks, but still, when you're a rookie playing in your first playoff appearance, to have that type of success at the rim, it's paid off in dividends for the Mavs.
Yeah, and rookies typically don't get a ton of burn in the postseason, no matter, unless they're like the face of the franchise or they're one of the core guys. And he, Lively's been good. He's not that player per se, but he is an integral part of what they do. And it'll be interesting to see how the Celtics match up with those guys, because the thing that Boston has been able to beat teams for the most part because they're just deeper. Their top five, top six are just, they're better than the most top five, top six when you look at it in its totality. It'll be interesting to see how they match up with some of, the non-Kyrie and the non-Lukas on this Mavs team. But before we get any further, I just want to make sure that we talk a little bit about our good friend Kyrie Irving, because he is, I think for Celtics fans, there may not be another more polarizing individual in the last 15, 20 years than Kyrie Irving. For those who have been under a rock for the last, 5, 6, 7 years, Kyrie Irving is a former Celtic who at one point, basically said, if you want me, I'll stay here. And then a few months later said, psych, kidding, I don't want to be here. And then he went on to, a couple different, went to Brooklyn, and now he's in Dallas. And when he went to Brooklyn, they formed like a super team with him, Kevin Durant, and our good friend James Harden. Did not work out because for various reasons, they just never were able to collectively get on the floor for any extended period of time. And now he is in Dallas, where he looks very much like the Kyrie Irving that played with LeBron in Cleveland, where he was the clear number 2 guy, and he was okay with that and did exceptionally well in that. Michael, you have not been around here when Kyrie Irving is in the building, so that will be an experience for you. Whatever, like the worst experience for a player on the road is like, just multiply that times about 400 or 500, and that's kind of what you will be seeing when Kyrie comes to the TD Garden. The level of disdain and hatred that Celtics fans have for this brother is insane. Now, obviously, after the Mavericks get to the finals and it's clear you're playing Boston, I imagine he's been asked a few questions about coming back to Boston. How has he handled those questions? Because I know he can be a little prickly sometimes, as you probably have experienced. But, you get a sense pretty early where he stands on things. So how has he handled those type of questions? Because they've already, I assume, have come, and they're going to continue to come until, this series is over.
Yeah, so I want to say the first time he was asked about it was by Ernie Johnson from TNT on the broadcast. And when he was asked about facing his old team, Boston, he pretty much said, he kept it short. Boston is just another team that's in the way of our goal.
Yep.
He's been like that all season. He's tried not to look ahead. He keeps saying the job isn't finished, which is an ode to his late mentor, Kobe Bryant. I think it's interesting because he's just had a different level of focus since the playoffs started. And I want to say when he was talking to Scott Van Pelt from ESPN the same night, he admitted to not being, I want to say, the best version of himself back when he was in Boston. He said he was going through a lot off the floor, and that contributed to whatever happened back then. And I think he's embracing the challenge of playing in front of those Boston fans. We know how, especially how rowdy they can get. He's encountered a couple of fan interactions throughout the playoffs. He had a fan that he was going back and forth with in Oklahoma City. And I think he and Luka especially, they feed off that type of stuff. Like they love getting heckled. They don't want it to go to a certain point, of course, to the point where they're being disrespected, but they like the fan interaction, the engagement, silence in crowds. I think this is going to be something we probably haven't seen in a while since maybe LeBron went back to Cleveland as a member of the Heat. So I'm looking forward to see how Kyrie and the rest of the Mavs kind of take how he's going to be received. But when we talk about what he's done on the floor, it's been phenomenal. Just his ability to score is there. He's also taken interest in defending, and his leadership is there for this team. Like he's the vocal leader. He's trying to keep his guys together on the sidelines, in the locker room, and he's just been, I want to say, the best version of himself that we've seen in a while.
The NBA Finals have finally arrived and will once again be one of the hottest tickets in sports. You want to be there and not have to mortgage the family home or take a second job to do so, right? Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. That's a huge get when it comes to the NBA Finals, which will start in Boston for games 1 and 2. Those tickets are going to be super pricey, so waiting to the last minute and take advantage of the Game Time app makes a ton of sense. Here in Boston, every season is sporting season, so for me, the Game Time app makes it super easy to find tickets for just about every sport in my area, which is great this time of year when family or friends pop into town at the last minute and you're scrambling for something to do that won't break the bank, like, getting tickets to the NBA Finals. Game Time has you covered. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. I would agree. I mean, I've seen, even before the playoffs started, I saw at least half a dozen Mavericks games this year. And the thing that jumped out to me about Kyrie that was very different than when he was in Boston was when he was in Boston, he was kind of cast in this alpha top dog leadership role that I don't know if Kyrie was ready to embrace it to the level of which the responsibilities that come with being in that role come with. Like Kyrie is great at doing his thing and he's great at, getting other guys involved, but to be the adult in the room, to be the one responsible for the success of everyone. Like he's ready to be a mentor to Tatum, but I don't know if he was ready to be Jason's leader. Same thing with Jaylen Brown, and because all of those guys were looking at him to be their leader because he was the best player on the team. And when he was doing a little bit more. He just didn't really know how to, I think, fully get the best out of them. And I think a lot of it just had to do with he just wasn't ready for that role. And part of it, I think, had to do with the fact that that's a role that he isn't necessarily built for. Kyrie is a phenomenal player, but I don't think it's a coincidence that the best versions of Kyrie Irving are the ones that we saw with LeBron James and the one that we're seeing now with Luka. I don't think it's a coincidence that those are the only two scenarios in his entire basketball life where there was a guy on the team that was better than him. And I'm just curious, how has he been with the non-Lukas on the team? Like, how has that engagement interaction been? Because to me, that for Kyrie, that's critical that he gets that part of things right. And it seems like he has from afar.
Yeah. You mentioned it right there. Back then when he was the alpha on the Celtics, I think he was like he admitted he wasn't in a space where he could be that leader. Now, since he's been through a lot since he last went to the NBA Finals with Cleveland, and he has the experience factor. I think that's the important part of his leadership. He's been there at the highest level. We all know the shot he made in Game 7. So he has a certain level of credibility when it comes to speaking to these young guys on the Mavs. One player in specific who I want to highlight is Jaden Hardy. Second-year guard. He's from Detroit, which is obviously where I was in my last stop, but he's kind of taken a mentor-menteeship or type of relationship with Jaden Hardy. We spoke to him at practice last week, and he pretty much said, like, hey, I'm trying to do everything. I'm trying to soak up everything I can from Kyrie when it comes to just how he carries himself on the floor, off the floor, and just especially like he has the ability to like use his dribble and use his handle to get to the rack, similar to Kyrie. And he says he's trying to take his moves as well. So when it comes to other guys on the team, I look at a guy like Hardy. I look at a guy like Josh Green. I look at guys like Lively, who are still fairly young in their careers, and they're looking at Kyrie because he's been there. So I think his words carry a little bit of weight when it comes to this team, just because he's seen it at the highest level.
Mm-hmm. And before I get you out of here, I wanted to talk a little about Kristaps Porzingis, who has missed several games for the Boston Celtics with calf injury. He should be ready to roll come NBA Finals time. What impact does a player like that, you think, have on just what the Mavs are looking to do? Because at 7'2", he has the ability to score on a block. He loves to knock down shots from the elbow, can shoot the three ball as well. How does a guy like that change or modify the Mavericks' approach to this series?
Yeah, it's going to be a difficult matchup for sure. And I honestly think he's the X factor for this Boston Celtics team. Obviously, they play really well without him. But when you add a guy at that size who can do all the things you just mentioned, it's a nightmare for opponents. And it's interesting because Karl-Anthony Towns, not similar build size-wise, but bulk-wise. Of course, he's bigger, but I think the Mavericks did a really good job in limiting him in this last series. He was struggling really, really badly from the three-point line until that game 4 when he hit 3 clutch threes in the fourth quarter. I think if the Mavs can pretty much do the same defensive scheme that they did against Cat, I think they'll be successful. But if Kristaps is as healthy as we think he's going to be, he's going to pose a big he's going to pose a matchup problem for the Mavericks bigs. Because you got to bring Gafford out to the 3-point line. You got to bring Lively out to the 3-point line. He can stretch the floor and knock those shots down. So I think it'll be a big matchup. Yeah.
And not only for his own offense, but one of the things that the Celtics miss with him is the spacing that he provides. Yeah. Because like you said, if you have your big defending him and that big is way out on the 3-point line, that means Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Dereck White and Drew Holiday, they've got more access to get into the paint and less worries about help side defender. And if a guy like Lively or Gafford, who's defending Kristaps, is out there on that 3-point line and they go downhill to try to help out, they're going to kick it out to Porzingis for what'll maybe be a wide open or lightly contested jump shot or 3-pointer. So they really do with Porzingis put you in kind of a pick your poison place for sure. Now,
I think he's going to get an interesting reception once he returns to Dallas as well. We talk about Kyrie going back to Boston.
So how do you let me talk? Feed me that. You put those crumbs on the table. Let's eat. How do you think he's going to be perceived? Because people forget that he spent some time in that, and he's played with Luka.
Yeah, he's played with Luka. Spent a couple of years with him here in Dallas. I think that was the ideal pairing when he was brought over here from Washington, and it just never panned out. He wasn't healthy when he was here. And at times, I don't think him and Luka really connected in the way that obviously he and Kyrie connect, in the ways that Luka and Brunson connected. That pairing just really never fit. And I think Mavericks fans haven't forgotten that the Kristaps Porzingis era. So I think he's going to hear it when he comes back for Game 3.
I'm looking forward to doing a little compare and contrast. Like, how will the reception of Kyrie rank against the comparison of Porzingis? Who's going to hear more from the home crowd?
I'm thinking it's going to be Kyrie in Boston for sure, though.
For sure. And before we get out of here, I wanted to definitely touch on something you touched on earlier, and just to give people a sense, this is your first year on the Mavs beat. So some may wonder, well, where did he come from? Let them know what you were doing before you came to Dallas, and why That will give them a sense of why I'm saying this brother has gone from ashy to classy in the business. Let them know where you came from, Mike.
Yeah, so I'm actually a month and a half into being on the Mavs beat. And the previous 2 seasons, I was covering the Detroit Pistons for the Detroit News. So they had the worst record in the league back-to-back years. It was they had they tied the league's longest overall losing streak this year, 28 consecutive losses, which they were actually up on the Boston Celtics by 20 at halftime.
I remember.
This was the last time I was at TD Garden. And you just had a feeling that it wasn't going to last. And Boston just walked them down in the second half. They got focused. They stopped shooting those threes, and they played more on the inside. It was curtains from there. But right after that game, ironically, they broke the streak against the Toronto Raptors. It was the same day that OG Anunoby was traded to the Knicks. But yeah, it's been an interesting path for sure. Leaving 2 weeks, with 2 weeks left in the regular season to go cover a team that's now in the NBA Finals. Man, it's been a journey.
Yeah, but man, look, you have paid your penance for this, man. I mean, you went through probably two of the toughest seasons for a beat writer, because as much as you are impartial and you just want to cover the games and you enjoy that process, you want to cover a team that's winning some games too. It gets a little tired after a while. You know the team you're covering lose game after game after game. I don't have a ton of experience about that because when I used to cover the Pistons back in the day, they were nice. Ben Wallace, Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton, Rasheed Wallace, they were nice. And after that, not so much. But it's great that you are finally, getting a chance to really see what the other side of the NBA life is like. And again, continue success covering this Mavericks team, and we'll see you up here in Boston very soon. And again, Michael Curtis, Dallas Morning News, cover the Dallas Mavericks. And before we get out of here, just want to do one last quick shout out to Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of CLNS Media Network, and also Game Time, which takes the guesswork out of buying last-minute tickets to your favorite sporting events. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS, and get you $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. For Michael Curtis, this is Sherrod Blakely, and this is the Big Three NBA Podcast.